Hello everyone, so welcome back to Microeconomics. So in the previous lecture, we talked about the short-run behavior of a perfect competitive firms. We study how the firm will figure out the profit maximizing output level in the short runs. We also talk about the production decisions of the firms. They will compare the price of the products in the markets to the average variable cost in the short runs and the average total cost in the short runs in order to determine whether they should produce or not produce in the short runs. Well, in today's lecture, we are going to talk about whether a perfect competitive market will have a long-run solutions. So in the short runs, we know all the perfect competitive firms are going to produce where P equal MR equal MC to maximize the profits. However, in the long runs, we are not very interested in how a single firm will behave. Instead, we are asking questions: how the industries will behave. And by looking at the graph here, we get an idea when the firm is producing a profit maximizing output where MR equal MC, which is 4 units, the firm is actually earning a positive economic profit. Well, in the long runs, we would like to know whether firms are going to decide whether to stay in this industry, or maybe there are some new rivals who see this profits would like to enter the industry. So the easy way to evaluate the situation is to think about if any firms in a perfectly competitive market it's earning a positive economic profit. Since the market has perfect information, you as an outsider, you know how to actually make the product, how to sell this product in exactly the same markets. Since someone already demonstrates that they can earn a positive economic profit, that means you can completely doing exactly the same thing, just repeat the process, and you will still be able to earn the same level of profit as the other competitors in the market. So that means a positive economic profits earned in a perfect competitive market basically means that there are so much money on the floor, it's just a matter of whether you pick it up or not. So when firms or new rivals find out there is a positive economic profits, well, those new firms or new rivals will come into the industry and trying to repeat the same process and earn that profits. However, if the price of the products in the market is actually falling below the average total cost, obviously some of the existing firms in the long run, they have to think about, maybe it's time not to just stop producing in the short runs. Maybe it's time to exit the industry. So when firms start realizing they are going to make an economic loss in the business in the long run, and there is no way for them to actually make up those losses and turn things around, in the long runs, firms will decide to exit the market. So in a perfect competitions market structure, the long-run solution is basically determined by whether the firm has an incentive to enter or exit. And there is one magical point where firms will neither make a change in the market, whether the enter or exits the market. And this condition is described here, where P, which is the price, equals to marginal cost, equals to marginal revenues, equals to the short-run average total cost, and equals to the long-run average total cost. So you might question, what does this conditions mean? So the condition basically means when the market price, which is the equilibrium price in the market, it's exactly equals to the marginal cost in the productions. And this marginal cost, it's intercepting not just the short-run average total cost, but also the long-run average total cost. And this point right here, where MC equals to short-run ATC and long-run ATC, basically represents the lowest cost to produce the products in the long run for the firm. So to think a little bit more further, in the long runs, what happens is firms are going to produce the product at the lowest possible cost. And the reason is because, well, they have to compete with all these other firms so that they can survive in these competitive markets. And there will be no tendency to make change because when every firm is charging a price equals to its ATC, the average total cost, basically means every firm is making a zero economic profit. Again, you should not be confused about the term accounting profits and economic profits here. Earning a zero economic profits or normal profits is not a bad thing for the firm. So, when the firm seeing no profits to be extract from the market, the new rivals will not enter the market. So there will be no new entry. And when the firm seeing no losses, earning a normal profit means that the existing firm will stay in the industry. So that's why, well, no enter or exit will actually happen. If you think a little bit further, it also means that the existing firm will not change the productions in the market because either the firm producing more or less, when the quantity of the production change in the short run or the long run, the average total cost will only increase. So they are not going to be competitive compared to the competitors in the market. And also, no one in the markets, no firms in the markets will make change of the size or the production scales. Because again, when the firm moving along the long run average total cost curve, a bigger scales will yield a higher cost, and a lower scale will yield a higher cost too. So at this point, this is basically where all the firms in the existing markets will stay put and not making any changes. Well, in general, we basically call this a long-run equilibrium in a perfect competitive market. So many people actually misunderstand why a perfect competitive market is a standard benchmark model in the study of microeconomics. Well, it is a standard benchmark model because all the firms in the competitive markets will always earn zero economic profits, or what we call normal profits. And on top of that, there are two more reasons why we want to make it a benchmark. Because we would like to use these benchmark models to compare to other imperfect competitive markets. Especially, we would like to compete the perfect competitive markets to other incompetitive markets in terms of these two metrics. Number one, the allocator efficiency, which we talked about in the previous videos, and also the productive efficiency. So we learned that all the competitive firms will be allocator efficient because they will always produce the goods where P equals MC. Well, the firms in a perfect competitive market also, it's what we call a productive efficiency one. Well, they are productive efficient because they will always produce the good at the lowest possible cost in the society. Well, how do we know the competitive firm will always produce at the lowest cost? Well, obviously, when we look at the previous examples, we know in the long runs, the perfect competitive markets will only have one equilibrium. And this equilibrium is when P is equals to the long run average total cost. And that P equals to long run average total cost, it's also the lowest cost to produce. So that's why there is no tendency for firms to deviate from this most efficient productions in the society. So when the firm is productive efficient, we basically say that, well, they are willing to produce the goods in the society at the lowest possible trade-offs. They are willing to adapt to the most advanced technology. They are willing to produce the goods at the best possible scales. they are willing to utilize all the available resources to produce it at a lower cost. And that's why we believe the perfect competitive markets is going to give us a good benchmark to compare to other non-competitive markets. Well, one thing that's very interesting to note is that when the markets actually have some changes, it also changes the behavior of the firms in the perfect competitive markets. So remember when we studied the supply-demand models, we know that the supply or the demands can be shifted by different factors. So for instance, demand can be changed by incomes, the price of the substitute goods, or maybe future price, number of buyers, or taste and preferences. The supply curve can change by number of buyers, the cost of the productions, the future prices, and many other factors. So let's suppose if you imagine there is a sudden change of demand. Let's say there is a sudden increase in demand of this single market. If all the firms are already at its equilibriums, and with this change of the demand in the market, you can easily see how the equilibrium price will rise in the market. Well, since price is rising in the market, and that allow the existing firm to produce a different level of outputs to earn profitable profits. Well, firms are going to increase the level of outputs in the markets to earn profits. However, one very important thing to note is when the firms are making profits, well, this profits will also attract new rivals. So in the long run, what happened is with this change of demand in the markets and with the additional profits earned by the firms, the profits will attract new firms. It will change the number of firms exist in one single market. And hopefully you remember when the total number of firms increase, it will also increase the supplies in the markets. And ultimately, firms will keep increasing in the markets until some point it will stop. And obviously, the total number of firms will keep increasing until the point where price is back to its original place, where all the firms in the markets will finally making a zero economic profits again. Also, if you think about if there is a sudden change of demand, let's say in this case, decrease in demands in the market. Well, same thing, we are arriving in a new equilibrium price, which is P2. Well, now, with the decrease in demand, the price is going to drop in the markets. And unfortunately, the firms in the markets will face this long-run losses. Well, some of the firms will actually start thinking in the long run, they might want to exit. So once firms start making decisions to exit the markets, the total number of firms will reduce in the markets, which causing the supply curve to shift to the left. Well, at some point, when the firms start quitting the markets and exiting the markets, and it will ultimately drive the price up again, well, the supply will slowly decreasing until some point it will stop, which is when the price meeting the original price again, when the firm starts earning zero economic profits or normal profits in the market again. Well, in general, we can define this behavior with different types of industries. Well, not always the price will back to its original place. There are three types of industry that we can describe with this behavior of change. So one is called the constant cost industry. So the constant cost industry, it's basically the two cases that we described earlier, where the price of the goods will always be back to its original place. Well, there's one that we call increasing cost industry. So the increasing cost industry, it's described by the second pictures in the slides. The increasing cost industry is the one when there is more firm entering the markets, it will drive up the cost, the overall cost of the industry. Well, something that you can imagine. Maybe when we have an industry that producing, let's say, furniture. If we have several additional furniture company enter the markets because they see profits in the industry, well, those firms or new rivals, they will start buying the production's resources, such as the raw materials, the labors, and maybe competing with the production plants, which is the factories. When more firms enter, well, more firms will buy those resources, which drive up the cost of the resources in the industry. And when everyone is facing a higher cost, the long-run average total cost will rise. And that's why the firms entering the markets drive up the cost of the productions will ultimately also drive up the equilibrium price in the long run in this competitive markets. Well, the third types of industry, it's what we call the decreasing cost industry. So this is the types of industry when more firms joins, it actually reduces the overall cost of the industry. Well, it actually happens quite a lot in the past. Well, when do we see a decreasing cost industry? Maybe when we look at the flat screen TV industry, that could be one that we describe. So the flat screen TV industry, it's a very special one. Well, most of the flat screen TV producers in the world, they actually produce their TV almost using identical components. So if you think about the productions of televisions, it always requires those LCD screens or LED screens. So those screens are basically produced by a few of the industries producers, like Samsung or maybe Sony or maybe some third-party industries in the world. Well, in order to reduce the cost for those components, each television producers cannot just produce it on their own. They might actually want to buy it from some of the general screen producers so that they can actually use the components for cheap. So more and more firms comes in, it will allow those LCD or LED manufacturer to take advantage of economy of scales. And in this case, well, the television producers might be able to buy those components at an even cheaper price, which drive down the cost of the productions. So those are the things that we actually described in the real world. However, one thing you should always keep in mind is we are using the perfect comparative market setting as our baseline model to describe these phenomenon in the reality. However, the perfect comparative market itself, it's never exists in the world. There is no one single market that we can actually qualify to call it a perfect comparative market. And hopefully you can keep that in mind for now. So this is the chapter that we study the perfect comparative markets, which is our baseline models. Well, in the next video, we are going to discover the opposite of the perfect comparative markets, which is the monopoly markets. In the monopoly markets, we would like to compare the efficiency level to the perfect comparative markets, how the monopoly firm will behave, and also what types of pricing strategies they have as compared to the perfect comparative firms. So I will see you guys in the next videos.